Hello everyone. Now, you all know how much I like coincidences, and today has been a day of some coincidences for me. I woke up having had a really good night's sleep, feeling really refreshed, but during the night I'd had quite a lot of very vivid dreams. Some of them involved me speaking to people from my past, having conversations with them, and they're people who passed away and aren't around anymore. And I woke up, as I say, feeling really sort of at peace with myself and well rested. But it occurred to me almost as soon as I woke up that dreams like that must have had an immensely powerful effect on primitive man. We haven't evolved much in the last sort of 100,000 years. Homo sapiens, who walked around on the earth at that time, had very similar brains to ourselves. They must have had very similar kind of dreams, and but without more modern interpretations of dreams, of psychology, of the nature of sleep and so on, they must have seemed very real to people. Had I been a Stone Age human having a dream like that, it would have seemed like almost like a kind of talking to the dead kind of experience, and it was just a sort of thought that passed through my brain as I woke up, and didn't think much more about it. But then fast forward a couple of hours and I'm listening to Karen on Kits with Karen's YouTube channel. She was doing a live chat. She started doing them last weekend, and I was watching out to see if she did the same thing this weekend, and sure enough, spent about an hour or so listening to her chat. And one of the subjects she brought up was, she asked, did anyone know if anyone had ever wargamed Stone Age man kind of battles and so on. So I immediately thought of this set of rules here called Bogger 10, which I've still, as you can see, I've still got in my collection on my bookshelves. And this was a set of rules that came out in 1999 from a company called the Honourable Lead Boiler Suit Company. Now, these people are still around. They've still got a website. You can still go to it. They do a very interesting range of figures, which includes still these dinosaur figures that you can see at the rear of the desk here. And they do other things as well. They do polar expedition anyway, but that's beside the point. They also did a set of rules called Saurian Safari, which I've also got. And there's a supplement there with additional creatures and weapons and so on, but it's the same set of rules. So there was Bogger 10 and there was Saurian Safari. Now, Karen, lovely person, but she does have they're not eccentric kind of opinions. They're often held by a lot of people. She's very much in the kind of category of people who think that things like the moon landing, she was talking about that. She doesn't believe in the fact that man got to the moon. She is of the opinion, though, that Stone Age man was around at the time of the dinosaurs. And that fits in quite neatly with this set of rules to an extent. Bogger 10 and Saurian Safari are very, I would say, very heavily influenced by the novel of Arthur Conan Doyle called The Lost World. This is absolutely great book, by the way, if you've never read it. Really great fun. It was turned into a film in 1960, which was a bit kind of corny, very kind of antiquated cinematic techniques, using iguanas as dinosaurs and all that kind of thing. Since then, there's been a TV adaptation of the book, which, if you can get hold of it, I would highly recommend. I'm actually, at the time it was on television, recorded it and managed to get it onto a disc, so I'll be able to put up in the background some footage from that particular TV adaptation, so you can see a little bit of what it was like. But I won't risk playing it to you in case I infringe copyright or anything. Just use a sort of short clip from it. It starred Edward Fox, and Bob Hoskins, amongst others, was in it. The story of The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle is of an expedition to South America to explore this plateau where there is said to be monsters and so on, and they turn out to be dinosaurs, primitive dinosaurs, who are kept on the plateau by the fact that there's no easy descent from it. They don't go so far as to explain why the flying creatures can't get off it, but there we go. It's a bit like kind of Jurassic Park, only the kind of the premise of it is that there's this cut off area of the planet where dinosaurs are able to live and have survived the extinction. Conan Doyle wrote this book in 1912, and at that time, the knowledge of the extinction of the dinosaurs wasn't as complete as it is now. There was no notion of there being a mass extinction of a meteor hitting and so on and causing the mass extinction event. So it was quite feasible in those days to think that it would have been possible for some dinosaurs to have survived in remote parts of the world, and that's what Arthur Conan Doyle played on. Now, Bogaten is kind of it's based in an alternative reality. I think the year is 1976. So there are basically colonial explorers, because the Earth is still in the kind of is still living in the kind of Victorian colonial period. So you have all these Victorian explorers, African adventurers and so on, going off searching and hunting dinosaurs. So that's the sort of basis of the background for this game. So you can see immediately that both of these two versions of dinosaurs and human beings being able to kind of overlap in terms of their history, are based on imagination and creation and so on. Scientifically, this wouldn't attempt to stand up to scientific scrutiny. It's just a sort of a fun set of war games rules. Conan Doyle, on the other hand, he's a little bit more of a kind of enigmatic kind of character. I mean, he's obviously most famous for creating the fictional detective Sherlock Holmes, who is an extremely rational, forensic mind, completely the opposite of the sort of mindset that Conan Doyle was adopting when he wrote The Lost World. That everything can be deducted, everything has to be proven scientifically and so on. And the world of dinosaurs and men overlapping is completely impossible if you look at it scientifically. I mean, for one thing, at the time that the dinosaurs existed millions of years ago, the oxygen content of the atmosphere was something like 38%. Far too high nowadays. It's 22%, and human beings couldn't live in an atmosphere of 38% oxygen, whereas dinosaurs couldn't live nowadays in an atmosphere where there's only 22% oxygen. So just from that point of view, you can dismiss the idea that the two species ever overlapped. But nonetheless, in 1912, when Conan Doyle wrote this book, it's an amazing feat of imagination. It's great fun to read, and you can well believe that such a scenario could have happened. Another contemporary work, which they turned into a film. When was this? In the early 1980s. This one was Quest for Fire. Now, I forget whether I said actually that I did say that The Lost World had been turned into a film in 1960. Yeah, so Quest for Fire is based on a book that was written in 1911, so the year before The Lost World came out. It was written by a Belgian. I've got his name written up here. Hard to remember. Yeah, it's a Belgian fantasy novel by J.H. Rosny, which was the pseudonym of two different people who were brothers. The author of Quest for Fire actually being the elder of the two brothers, Joseph Henry Honoré Burr. And it didn't get published in English until 1967. It's a very kind of... there are no dinosaurs or anything like that in it, but it's certainly written before... we had a great understanding of the sort of origin of the species, if you like to call it that. There obviously, since Darwin, there was an understanding that there had been an evolution from kind of ape-like creatures, but it was pure speculation how that evolution had taken place, and novelists just picked up the idea and ran with it. And in The Quest for Fire, it takes place, reading again from Wikipedia, it takes place in 100,000 BC in Europe. The fauna of this period is omnipresent, including mammoths, cave lions, oryx, cave bears, saber-toothed cats, giant elks, and saiga antelopes. Several humanoid ethnicities live alongside the animals. Now this is where it's complete invention. So you have the Ulams, who are Neanderthal-like hunter-gatherers who worship the fire and are able to ally themselves with beasts. The Wars, who are people without shoulders from the marshes. The blue-haired men, who are huge four-handed simians with bluish fur. And the men-eaters, who are bestial cannibals. And the red dwarfs, who are extremely warmongering and xenophobic pygmies. Now, the film doesn't follow that plot very well at all. The film is more... There are several different races, of humanoids at various stages of evolution. And fire is obviously an important life-preserving entity, which one particular tribe lose their fire. It goes out and then they haven't got any way of relighting it. They don't know how fire is actually created, so they have to go off in search of a fire in order to be able to kindle their own one, take it back to their cave and kindle it. That's the sort of basis of the film. But anyway, all this is just to say that there are lots of fantasy-like settings in which you could play a war game, play a game with Neanderthals fighting humans, or humans fighting dinosaurs, and so on. And again, as I say, the Honourable Lead Boiler Suit Company are still around. I'll put up a picture of. They do ranges of suitable figures for humans as well. They do Neanderthals and Homo erectus type figures and so on. I noticed some of them are sold out at the moment, so I don't know whether they will be replenished anytime soon. But the range is there; it is available, and if people are interested in playing games in those kind of settings, you've got these rules, you've got various other scenarios that you could make up for yourself, and you have a fantastic range of figures that you could use. Especially with 3D printing now, there's lots of STL files of 3D prints and so on. I've got quite a lot of these figures still unpainted, so you never know, I might get around to playing a game of it, maybe sometime in the future. But it just struck me as an odd coincidence that I'd been thinking about primitive man and so on the same day as Karen brought this up in her chat. The other thing I was going to say, though, about Conan Doyle and this sort of dichotomy he seems to have between creating highly imaginative fiction and also having characters who are very forensically minded, like Sherlock Holmes, is that around this same time that these two books came out, there was obviously the great fraud of the Piltdown Man, which it's fairly well established now was perpetrated by a sort of semi-amateur archaeologist called Giles Dawson down in Sussex. And at the time of this fraud, there was a search for the missing link. People understood and were beginning to accept Darwin's theories about the origin of the species, but they were looking for the missing link between the ape and modern man, and thought, surely somewhere on the planet there has to be archaeological evidence of that missing link. And Charles Dawson fabricated this find. He actually manufactured a skull of a humanoid that he called Piltdown Man, but he made it basically from various bits and pieces of I think it was an orangutan's, I'm not sure, it might have been a chimpanzee's skull, and various other jawbones and so on, to try and make it look convincing. Again, at the time it fooled a lot of people, including the Natural History Museum, but it wouldn't stand up to modern scientific scrutiny. But the interesting link with Arthur Conan Doyle is that he lived in the neighbourhood of in Sussex, close to where this Piltdown Man was discovered. Charles Dawson was there's still a family solicitors in Uckfield in Sussex, where they do have one of the skulls, I think a model of one of the skulls in their law offices in Uckfield. But anyway, Conan Doyle lived very close, and he did have this sort of part of his character, very similar to Karen, of believing in not the supernatural as such, but he did. Conan Doyle was very much a protagonist of seances and so on, which is very common for his generation around the period of the Great War. What was I saying? It's gone from my mind now. Conan Doyle. Yeah, he did have this propensity to strong kind of belief in these fantastic kind of connections between primitive man and modern man and so on, and a complete lack of understanding of evolution and chronology and so on. So at one time, Conan Doyle was even put up as a potential suspect for the fraud of the Piltdown Man. It was suggested that he might have gone past the dig, because he did live quite close to it, and deliberately plant these artifacts himself. And it's never been entirely dismissed to this day, but the amount of evidence against Charles Dawson is overwhelming now. So he was not only responsible for that fraud, but for a great many other archaeological bits of mischief. That it's highly unlikely that you would have had two pranksters, living within the same area, working independently of one another. But anyway, that's all I want to say now. I just thought it's turning out not to be a short video, but I just thought I'd put up a short video as a sort of blast from the past, bit of nostalgia of this old set of rules. And if you want to play the game, then you have all those figures in the Honourable Ed Boiler Suits range that you can choose from to play a game with it. Thanks very much for watching.